Welcome to Off the Cuff with Kel, Conversations from the Front Line, a podcast and live show for survivors and the leaders who support them. I'm your host, Kelly Humphries, a survivor of child sexual abuse, advocate, author, speaker, ambassador, a lover of all things outdoors, with over 15 years of law enforcement experience. Please support me in my mission to break cycles of abuse and trauma. You can help by donating to my Patreon account at patreon.com/Kelly Humphries. Hello and welcome to Off the Cuff with Kel, guys. I'm so excited to be here tonight. I've got an amazing guest, the wonderful Kevin Laws, all the way from the US of A. It is 5:30 a.m. in the morning. Kevin, how are you?
I am barely awake, but good evening to you from the land down under.
I'm so happy that you were able to jump on, I'll say tonight or this morning, but I'm just really excited. Like, I know we've had a couple of chats already, and like I said, I had goosebumps from our conversation the other day, just because it was just, I know you've just got so much to share with us. So before we go into anything, I'm just going to drop it in there, guys. There could be some triggering content that we will share. There's some, child sexual abuse material that we're going to be talking about, how this happens, what happens, who's doing it, and some of this stuff might be difficult to hear. So there are support numbers on my website if you do find the contents of what we are speaking about difficult to hear. So make sure you tune in, guys, because this is a very powerful conversation that we're about to have. So we are live, and also we will have a podcast audience. So if you're live right now on your screens, guys, hit that share button to make sure everybody is getting these messages. So Kev, my friend, over to you. You have 20 years investigating child sexual exploitation. Tell us a little bit about how you started on this really amazing and deeply difficult journey.
Well, believe it or not, I started before. Well, the internet was just starting. We weren't even calling it email yet. We were still calling it electronic mail. We were still putting pen to paper, so literally writing people letters when they responded to us. I started helping, just helping one of the agents. Still doing the traveler cases. I was in a border town. I won't mention the location, but people used to come down and they'd meet in a hotel room. We'd have adjoining rooms, and I always wanted to be the first one through the door, because that's the exciting part. So we'd have an undercover doing the chat, and then we'd go and arrest the person. And then fast forward, my boss was like, "Hey, you want to go to this computer class?" And he spits out some long name, and I'm like, "No." And he says, "Well, I put your name in for it anyhow." To this day, I don't know why he asked me, if he just was sending me. So literally about a year later, he said, "Hey, you remember that class I put you in for last year?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't remember what I had for dinner last night." So it was basic computer evidence recovery training. So off I went to Glencoe, Georgia for 6 weeks. Man, I should add, it's the worst 6 weeks of my life, because I didn't know anything about computers. I mean, I guess they sent me because I knew how to turn it on, and knew that the CD holder wasn't a coffee cup holder.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. So along with that started the real journey, because the internet was just coming on, and man, that was the floodgate right there. I started doing the computer forensics. So I was the only person in town doing it. So I teamed up with the FBI agent, and him and I called us the task force. It was only him and I, and the rest is history.
Yeah,
wow. It just snowballed from there.
And snowballed because of the amount of work there was to do in this, or?
Oh yeah, because the when it first started out, it was kind of slow. I was doing all the forensics for the local police department, and then who knew it was going to be just all child exploitation, and back then nobody called it child exploitation. It was just child porn or child pornography. Um, and the crazy thing is, um, as bad as this is going to sound, it's just a reality. Pictures back there weren't that bad. I mean, they just weren't. Um, you'd see a little boy with an erect penis, or a naked little girl with her legs spread, and the focal point of the camera would be on her pubic area. But rarely did you see someone actually touching a child. That was a rarity.
Mm.
You know,
It's so hard, even like Kevin, just to hear that, because for me, I just think of anything like that just being so horrific. And yet, I don't think people fully understand what is being put out there. Like, I think that's shocking. And I know I'm a law enforcement. I've been doing this for 15 years. I get it. Like I know what this stuff is. And like I know that what you're saying is the vast difference between what was bad then, but what is bad now, and it's almost like it's desensitized, or like, do you know what I mean? Like,
oh no, yeah, that's
yeah,
yeah, that's absolutely what it is now, and I've been doing long enough that I followed the progression. I followed the progression of it. And now we're at a point where it's just one-upmanship. Um,
mm,
oh, this guy did this with the child. Oh, I can do better. Or it came to a point when I was working one investigation where, in order to stay in the group, you had to provide. Well, there was different levels of the group, right? So to be in the highest level, you actually had to provide on demand abuse. Like, yeah.
just to be clear, so for anyone who's listening, Kevin did, I think, would you say 11 years as an undercover agent working with Department of Homeland Affairs?
Homeland Security investigations. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, so I need to explain that. So what happened is I started, you know, just as a regular agent helping out another agent on these types of cases, child exploitation. And
Mm,
then I started doing computer forensics. And then I transferred, believe it or not, from Alaska, or actually from Arizona up to Alaska, and I started working online undercover. So my first 2 years online undercover, my persona was that of a little girl. So 14, 13, 14-year old. Um, and that was easy. I mean, that was like, literally like shooting fish in the barrel. We could have arrested, one or two people a week if we wanted to.
mm.
And then however you want to put it, I either graduated up or graduated down. I started, I changed my persona. So originally I was a grandfather pimping out my grandkids, and then I was just a dad pimping out my kids.
Yeah,
So
wow. And it's hard because we don't have these. I don't think for many of us here in Australia, we haven't actually had a brutally honest conversation about this. I mean, as a law enforcement officer, I'll have this conversation and I'll listen to this at a conference or whatever with specialist investigators who are doing this work, and I expect to be, hearing this type of stuff. But for those of us who are parents who've got children and those types of things, like, these conversations are just, they're hidden from the media. They're not put out there to say, look, this is what's actually going on. This is what's really happening to these kids behind closed doors. And I just think that, I get that it's hard to hear. And for those of you listening, yes, it's hard to hear, but it's freaking necessary. Like, we need to know, because we just think that it's not happening to our children.
yeah, I agree, and the media is getting better, and I'll give Australia huge props. You guys are on the cutting edge of getting getting the word out there. Us, us here in the States, we're a little behind the curve. Not We're way behind the curve. But it is getting better, and that's the one thing I've always said for many years, that as good as the media does, they really do this crime type a huge disservice. Um, well, okay, that's true to a certain point, because I remember a number of years ago, someone took pictures, and I'm using this as an example to compare. Someone took pictures of some coffins coming off of a troop transport, and it was from bodies. It was from soldiers that were being recovered and sent off to be buried. And there was this big uproar from people saying, "How could you do that?" Contrast that with this. Imagine that you're trying to get the word out what child exploitation or what child abuse looks like, and you showed just one image on the air. People would lose their mind.
Yeah.
But there's still a way to do it, and do us, everybody that's worked in this field or has worked in this field, there's still a way to do it, and get the point across, instead of sugarcoating it like, "Oh my gosh, they had naked pictures of little kids and it was terrible," and people at home will go like, "Well, I just took pictures of my kid in the bathtub, and I have 3 of them hanging up on the wall. How bad could it be?"
Yeah. Yeah. So you've seen this, I guess, like, because you've sort of been there from the beginning, Kev. Like you started, rolling with the punches when those punches was, starting from the very beginning, when the internet first kicked off. And I'm not trying to highlight your age here or anything, but it's there's been a lot of changes, and we know ourselves as law enforcement or anyone working in the field with survivors, is like how quickly the internet changes, and to try to stay in front of that, to then actually be able to combat what's happening. So what changes, I guess, have you seen? Like you were talking before about one-upmanship, and I know just from the conference we attended recently that it's always about fresh material. Like the perpetrators want new stuff. They want things that they haven't seen before. And for me, thinking about the child at the end of that, like I can't, as a survivor myself, I can't even think about that without getting so upset about what that might look like for that kid.
Yeah. So, well, I won't go into that, because then I'm gonna, if I think back on a certain thing, I'll be sitting here crying, and it'll be everybody watching will be crying too. So I won't go that far into it. But yeah, the one-upmanship is it's. I mean, it's there. I seen it. I seen the progression from just the images to then you'd see hands-on, and then you would see bestiality thrown in there, and I quit saying long ago I've seen everything, because I've looked at well over a million images, well over a million images. And then I used to say, "Oh, I've seen everything," and then you do your next exam, and then there'd be something else new. That's another thing that I'm kind of an anomaly at. When I was doing the undercover, usually you'd have a case agent. That's what we called him, a case agent that would be running the case, and then the undercover only did the undercover part, and he went on and did something else. And then you'd have a forensics guy that did the forensics part. I did it all. I was one-stop shop. So I would do the undercover, and then I was doing the casework. So if the casework means writing the reports and all that, And then once we arrested the guy, I was doing the grand jury for the arrest, and then I was doing the forensics as well. So whenever it went to court, it was pretty easy because there was only one witness, and that was me. So, throw you up on the stand and say, "All right, Agent Laws, what happened?" And you just go.
Yeah.
Which was good and bad. Good because if there was an error, there's only one person to blame. And then the bad part was if there was an error, there was only one person to blame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was just at this conference, Kev, I heard a statistic around who's doing the offending, and it was mostly married, white, middle-aged men who've got children and families. Like, with your experience and what you've seen, who is doing this? Who are the people behind? Behind the screen?
No, that's it. That's on the money. As many people as I've talked to. If you found a woman, so 9 years I worked online undercover as an adult, pimping out my kids. How many actual women do you think I ran into? The
stats now, I think, and look, I could say that, could be getting this wrong. It might be about 40%.
Well, I ran into 3. In 9 years, I talked to hundreds of people that said, a good portion of that people said they were women. But I knew that was false because I would show me a picture and they'd oh, hey, I have to go let the dog out or something like that.
Yeah, right.
That was it. But yeah, I did get a couple. I have arrested a couple women, but it's pretty slim.
Yeah. So how quick, Kev? I know what I know, but you've got so many stories. How fast is this grooming? How fast does this happen?
Pretty fast. I'm talking about me as an adult. So I'm chatting to another adult, and I'm offering them my children. The fastest case I ever seen was start to finish was 28 hours from the very first chat to the person is in handcuffs. And the only reason it took 28 hours is because the guy said, "Oh, I have an event to go to tonight, or I would come and visit you tonight." Fat. The big case that I did. Well, I did a lot of big cases, good cases. I actually had a woman fly down from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada, and that took 3 weeks. And that was.
You came to pick up your child that you had.
Oh no! She wanted something way, way, way worse than that. She had posted an ad on a website, and I happened to be in, and I read the ad, and I said, "Man," I said, "this is someone that's screaming, 'Arrest me,' or somebody that's working undercover and has not taken my chat class, because nobody is this stupid." It literally said, "Hey, I'm a woman. I'm looking for a dad, daughter, mother, son, blah blah blah, incest family, willing to relocate for the right person."
Oh my God!
And I'm like, this can't be real.
I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I guess I'm just. I don't even have words for that.
Yeah, no, but so she wanted. I had a boy and a girl, so she wanted the 2 kids. She wanted me to get her pregnant and I won't go into the details because we would be edited off the air. I'll just say that she wanted me to get her pregnant and be molesting the newborn before it left the hospital. She wanted to adopt a kid from overseas that couldn't speak English and keep her chained up in the basement. And she wanted a dog.
Oh my God. And look, guys, again, if you're listening and if you're feeling triggered by this conversation, make sure you tap into the support networks. But this is, and I did warn you, this would be a very truthful conversation. Now, Kevin is from the US, but I'm going to tell you right now, this stuff happens in Australia. Okay. This is not just an American thing. It's not just, something that happens overseas, right? And this is why Off the Cuff exists. This is why we are having these conversations. I don't intend to stop even if I get taken off the air. I hope not, because I feel like these conversations must be had in order for you to know what's going on, and that we need to take action to protect our kids and make sure our devices are set to private, and to put those strategies in place. And Kev, later on in this conversation, we'll put some tactics, or if you've got some strategies for parents, we'll share those. But I've got goosebumps, hearing that, but I know that it's true, and I know from my service and my time that these things happen in Australia. But I know. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, don't, folks, wherever in the world you are listen to this, don't fool yourself and say it doesn't happen here. From the small town to the biggest city, no matter where you're at in the world, literally wherever you're at in the world, don't think because you're Muslim or Jewish or non-denomination, it doesn't happen in my community. You're an idiot if you think that's true. This is just the way it is. Pull your head out of your sand. It's not what I was going to say, but pull your head out of the sand.
Yeah.
And listen, folks, this is happening from everywhere. And to think, this is a good analogy that I like to use, and I heard it from somebody a number of years ago. When someone asked them, what's the magnitude of the problem? And he said, imagine throwing a grain of sand in the ocean and think that you're making a difference. That's where we're at. That's where we're at.
Well, I don't know if you know, Kev, but over here in Australia, we just had the Australian Child Maltreatment Study, which tells us that 1 in 3 young girls and 1 in 5 young boys will be sexually abused by the age of 15. And I think 75%, if I'm right, have usually been offended against more than once. So that's almost 25% of our population.
Yeah.
And our statistics would be very similar to the US. I have no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the and people need to take the statistics with a grain of salt, because this is the most underreported crime. This is the most underreported crime type, because, and I'll give you I have so many stories, Kel, like you said.
That's okay. We can do a part 2. That's okay.
We arrested this guy, and he was on his 4th generation. His 4th generation, and everybody, this is what's mind blowing. He molested his kids, and then his grandkids, and then his great grandkids, and he was working on his great grandchild. The dude's like 70-ish. Everybody knew that Uncle whatever sorry, I can't say that word. Whatever his name.
Say it. I do.
Whatever the fuck this guy's name was, everybody knew it, but nobody ever said anything until and the judge even said that at sentencing. He's like, you were on your 4th generation. You've been molesting 4 generations of your family, just because nobody said anything.
This is like we've had so many amazing podcasts on here, but this is like, and I love you, Kev. I love you already, but I'm just like getting so angry, like thinking about this. And I just want to these messages have got to get out into the world. Like, people need to know this shit.
They do. And people need to say stuff. And I've heard
some being scared, like, of what speaking, the whole bystander effect, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've never heard that before, but yes. I had a guy. I'm doing this investigation, and I'm talking to this guy's boss, and I said, hey, we're going after this. We're looking at this guy because he's looking at child pornography, and you say that word, and everybody knows. Now you say child sexual abuse material, which it always should have been, but back then we just said child pornography. And this guy says to me, well, if I'd have known he was looking at that stuff, I would have gave him a back office with a door. What?
I don't even know how to respond to that except WTF.
Yeah, am I missing something here? What the hell?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
It's fine because you'll give him an office with a door. How about the fact that he's looking at kids being raped? Did that not, enter into your mind?
Yeah,
but that's, and I've heard stuff like along that lines a number of times over my career. People just say stuff that I don't know if they don't understand exactly what child exploitation material is, or are I can't imagine. I would hate to think that people are that stupid that they would have an employee looking at children being raped while they're working and be okay with that and give them a corner office with a door.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might tend to overlook when they think that somebody's perhaps not doing the right thing, but I would like to think that now in this day and age that there's screening, there's that the internet will pick up on things, like especially if working for a government, and it has all those like little red flags that pop up when you're looking up at stuff that you're not supposed to be looking up at work, so there are those safeguards in place, I think, for a lot of businesses and organizations. But we've all got one of these little phones in our possession. People can do anything, and I think that a lot of people know stuff, but they don't want to say anything. They don't want to get in trouble. They just think that somebody else will say something. Like if you're seeing something, like it needs to be reported, and you can report at the ACE, or you can put the E-Safety Commissioner in Australia. These are all places where you can report child exploitation happening here in this country, right? We have an amazing task force in Australia, in fact, leading edge task force that is working internationally, like interagency, like collaboration all across the world to take care of this crime and to deal with this crime. And the investigators are incredible. Huge job to be doing. Like there's more stuff to do out there than they can manage, but it takes you reporting for them to be able to, all the keys that you have. You might have this like knowledge about something that might be the thing that they're after in order to arrest this guy or this person or whatever, so yeah, Kev, wow.
Yeah, it's good you brought that up about the cooperation, because when I first started working this, we used to have to do like I forget the wording for it. You had to do, if I wanted to contact you in Australia, I'd have to go through, like the attaché, and you'd write a report, and then I'd be like, hey, Kelly, can you send this report over to your counterpart who does child exploitation and blah, blah, blah. And then what happened was never one for like following the rules, like, hey, we need to do this, because I'm like, guess what? I need to find out where this dude is, where these images are. So what happens is, those of us that were in the beginning of this, you realize when you make a contact, and this is true today, you held on to that, and you held on to that phone number, because that was gold.
Yep.
So if somebody came to me like, Kevin, do you know somebody in Australia? I'm like, I know Kelly Humphries. Ring her up and tell her what you need. And people would be like, hey, what about the attaché or whatever? I'm like, dude, do you need it done now, or do you need it done in 3 months?
Yeah. And that's the thing, this stuff takes so long, and like these, in the meantime, there's a child at the end of this who's getting abused. Like,
Right. But no, but it's much better now. Around the world, it's to the point now where I don't think anybody, it's just commonplace now that if you have a contact, you just call them.
yeah,
Forget about going through the, whatever attaché or whatever channel it's supposed to be. You just pick up the phone, and then you tell your boss, say, listen, I have some live streaming going on. I called Kelly in Australia, and we're working this together. Yeah, but yeah, it's much better than it used to be.
yeah. What do you think about this statement that it would never happen to my child? I'd know about that.
Yeah, sure they would. And I'll share a good story about that. Had mom and dad come in, and they bring the laptop, and they bring their daughter in, and they're like, oh, we think she's doing bad stuff online. And I'm like, okay. I said, the girl's 12 or 13. I said, all right. I said, let me talk to her alone without you guys. So I have her in my office, and I said, listen, I said, don't try to BS me or blow smoke up my butt. I've been doing this a long time. Don't tell me you haven't did anything, because I know you have. It's just the way it is. And she's like, well, I've been showing my boobs on webcam and this and that. So I go back, and I don't tell the parents that, because, I need this to proceed smoothly. So I said, let me have the laptop, and I'll do a quick exam. And then come back, and I'll call you in a couple of days when I'm done with my exam. So they come back in, and I said, so it was a brand new laptop, had it for a couple months. I said, I said, what chat programs does your daughter have? And I get the head tilt. Like, what do you mean?
You do that very well, Kev.
Yes. What do you mean? Well, I mean, you know what a chat program is, right? And they're like, oh yeah, we're familiar with that. There's no chat programs on that computer. And I'm like, really? Huh. Well, there is a chat program, and let me share with you what your daughter's screen name is. So her screen name was Shower Whore. And I thought mom was going to choke. And then I explained to her, her mom and dad, what had been going on, and what pictures that their child had been sending, and that she had been chatting online for X amount of months, and they didn't have a clue. Didn't have an idea that was in a chat program on the computer. Yeah. Welcome to reality, mom and dad. So, to say it's not my child, you're fooling yourself. Folks, quit being so ignorant. And Kel, I tell you, I'm not the person that sugarcoats anything. I am not the politically correct guy. If you ask me a question, you're getting brutal honesty. I don't care if you're the president or mom and dad. Pull your head out of your ass. I'm telling you, this is reality. If you don't think your kids are chatting online, you're an idiot. Especially these days with phones and all that stuff. I'm not saying that your kid's doing something bad online, but be aware that they're just doing it.
Yeah, I know. I taught a cyber safety class not too long ago, and a lot of the kids had actually come up to me and said that their chats were interrupted by people who were trying to send dick pics, or just trying to lure them into another group, or automatically added them to an adult-only group, and they had to, they were smart enough to get themselves out of it, which was great. But I just found it very frustrating that predators are just taking the kids, like on Instagram, whatever it is, and putting them automatically into these groups where they're grooming and all that sort of stuff. So at least these kids knew what was going on, but they're smart kids. They're just normal, everyday kids at a school that, they get taught cyber safety education. If you didn't get taught cyber safety education, or you didn't get taught like some strategies and skills, you'd be really vulnerable, and they're still vulnerable, right? Because
Yeah.
there's sextortion now. There's all sorts of stuff going on out there that, it just takes such a short amount of time. I think, the AFP says as little as 6 minutes and you can be groomed online now.
Yeah, I can see that. And you know, some kids are getting the cyber safety talk, but the vast majority aren't.
Yeah.
But who needs the cyber safety talk is not the kids.
I was gonna say maybe the parents.
The,
Yeah.
the parents know it. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I didn't grow up with computers. Well, actually, I did grow up with computers. So and because of this job, I knew all the chat programs that the kids were using, because if the kids are using it, the predator is using it. So, working undercover, that's where I'm going. Whatever platforms out there that has a chat function in it, I'm there chatting. So, but I've talked to enough parents, just like the story I said earlier about not knowing that that there was a chat program. People are, adults, moms and dads are just behind the curb. They're either behind the curb, or they just don't want to know because it's just easier that way.
Yeah, and I think it can get really overwhelming, and I understand that. But if you go to the Australian Federal Police, the ACE website, there's a Think You Know website. It's I haven't got it on the screen, but it's just think with a letter U and know. They have hundreds of resources for parents to help you understand each chat program. Like, it tells you what to do, how to set the privacy settings. So head to Think You Know Australia, or you can go to the ACE and it will lead you to the Think You Know website. But guys, yeah, it's just so easy, and phones make predators, the accessibility is just there. Like, it doesn't take much. You can still have privacy settings on your chats and stuff like that and still be targeted by a pedophile or child sex offender.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that still drives me crazy to this day, is that people were saying, "Oh, he's such a nice guy. I never thought that XYZ was molesting kids." And my reply to that is this: the child molester isn't the guy that's sitting on his porch with a garden hose, waiting for the kids to get off the school bus and spraying them with the hose and saying, "Hey, you little whatever, get off my yard." It is the guy that has video games, and he is the nicest guy in the neighborhood. But listen, folks, if your neighbor, if all of his friends are under 15, that should be a clue. He might be the nicest guy in the world, but you should take that with a grain of salt. Listen, why is Joe next door? Sorry, folks, for those of you named Joe. Why is Joe next door only hanging out with children? That should be, you should ask that, and then if something happens, you shouldn't be shocked. The vast majority of people that I arrested are some of the nicest guys you ever want to meet. Honest to God, if I didn't know that they were child molesters, probably 90% of them, I would have went out and had dinner and a beer with them. Or I don't drink beer, but dinner and a drink with them, because they're nice guys, and that's why. Because you don't attract a child with, like the saying goes, you attract with honey, not with vinegar. And that goes with the guys that I was chatting to.
Yeah. So I think this is just popping into my head now as we're talking, and I'm thinking, like, how do these guys get into these families? Like, my uncle, for example, groomed my family to have access to me, right? So I'm kind of thinking, I heard a lot of stuff at the conference, around dating sites, sex offenders are trying to target single women who've got children, right? In order to then sexually access their children. So what have you noticed? What have you observed about how these guys are targeting I'll say guys, but also there are female offenders as well. So I don't want to be completely, painting guys with this brush on their own. But it is majority of sex offenders are men. Um, how are they doing this?
That's the thing. I wish there was an easy way to say, look for XYZ, but there's not, because any position of authority, any position where you have access to children, they're there. Um, this is one thing to keep in mind. One of the pointers that I'll give the moms and dads out there is, listen, if your son or daughter is chatting on whatever platform, Grand Theft Auto, World of Warcraft, there's chat functions in most games now, and your kid has 100 contacts in there. Guaranteed that 5 or 10% of those aren't kids. They aren't kids. They might be saying they're kids. They're absolutely not. And I never did outreach to kids, because they don't want to listen to the fat guy with the beard unless it's Santa Claus. But one perfect example I'll give you is I did a chat with kids, middle school, and I said, so how many people chat online? And of course, everybody. Okay, who has 20 friends? Who has 50 friends? Who has 100 friends? And then, as the number goes up, less hands. And I said, okay, who has the most friends in here? One of the kids says, I have 800. I have 800 friends. And I said, how many of those do you know? And he said, well, I know all 800. All right, let's think about that. That's a statistic. Unless you're a genius with a photographic memory, that's a statistical impossibility. You can't know 800 people. But this kid said, I know 800 people. So figure if he we'll just give him the benefit of the doubt. If he knows 800 people, 80 of those are not kids. They're adults, and they're gonna weed their way in there. And if you're in a group chat, that's what helps a predator, because if we're in there and I'm posing to be a 15-year-old or 16-year-old or 12-year-old, what have you, I don't even have to engage. This is what I can do. I can just sit there, watch the conversation as it goes to, hey, did you see Becky at the ball game the other day? And someone's typing, oh, what school do you go to? I go to whatever South. Oh, no kidding. Hey, what's your mascot? And one of the guys, guaranteed you're going to be sitting there taking notes, right? And then he might not use that information on that child, but guaranteed he's going to use that on the next person to say, hey, do you know Jimmy? I met him in World of Warcraft, and he goes to South Middle School, and the mascot's the pirate. Oh yeah, you must know Mr. Jones, who teaches English. Oh yeah, I know that guy. He's really cool. He has the long curly hair, and that's it. You're in.
Doesn't take much, and I think a lot of people are particularly. I mean, I hate it when their kids are back to school, and I often put a post up and say, these are the things that you should be posting, and how you should be posting your kids, because it just gives away the name of the school, where they are, like how old they are, what their favorite class is, like what they do on the weekends. And all of a sudden, there's this whole profile around your very tiny, young, innocent child that can be used when they finally get their chat room, or they're in a chat room somewhere,
Yeah,
and I just don't think people realize how easy it is for a perpetrator to use that to groom their child.
Yeah, absolutely. People, we're in an online world. It doesn't happen what's the saying? Facebook official, or what?
Yeah.
If it's not online, it never happened. But I was doing a presentation to school and to parents, and found out ahead of time we use this presentation between us. I was with the federal law enforcement and the state and locals. We all use this program. One of the guys went online and they said, I'm going to try something. I'm going to randomly go to this, find someone in this particular school and see if I can identify them just by the pictures. See if I can find out who they are through the parents' pictures.
Yeah.
And he built this presentation, and sure enough, you go through the feed, and you see the school T-shirt, and you're like, all right, well, I got the school now. We know the age, and then believe it or not, scroll down through the news feed, and there's a picture of the vehicle with the license plate number.
Yeah.
And we're like, gotcha. And we showed that to parents, and they're like, wow.
Yeah. Kev, so many questions I have for you. You're an author. You've written a book called Hunter of the Damned: A Walk Through Hell. Just tell us about that.
Well, this is a memoir. It covers about 16 years of my cases. So why did I write the book? I wrote the book because I needed to get that out of my head. I needed to get that stuff out of my head, as weird as that sounds. The book was finished in 2018, and to say it was finished, it was on paper, and then I had to step away. I couldn't do it anymore. It was literally killing me. And then my lovely wife said, "Hey, are you ever going to finish that book?" And I'm like, "I should." So the book just came out in August last year, so it hasn't even been out a year yet. But it is. I think everybody should read it. If you're getting into this field as an investigator, as a counselor, you need to read this. If you really want to know what's out there, read the book. I'm not saying that because I wrote the book. I'm saying because I can guarantee you there's nothing else like it in the world, and nothing else in print. There's chat in there, there's email in there. Nothing has been edited out. It is raw. It is rude, and it is in your face. The only thing that's changed in there, the bad guys don't deserve a voice in my book, so the bad guys aren't named. Other than that, the only thing that's changed when you're seeing the chatting, there's actual chat in there, word for word chat. Nothing has been edited. When you see the undercover chat, rather than using my undercover name, it just says undercover. And there's a couple pictures in there. And then at the end, I did something different. At the end of each chapter, I put in my thoughts. So there it is, folks. This is what I tell everybody that buys the book. Don't read it before bedtime. This is not your bedtime story book, but it's about as in your face. It's as in your face as you'll ever read a book. And as hard as it's going to be for people to read, I know people will be like, "Oh, this can't be true." Every word in that book is true. It's brutal honesty.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like when you reached out to me to come and jump on this podcast. So, and I'd sort of seen some of your work, and like we need to know this, though, Kev. Like, we've got to be having these conversations, and the fact that we're not means that this stuff is going to continue in silence, and I'm not okay with that. I'm just not okay with that.
You and me both. I would love to be in front of Congress or whoever, whatever governing body around the world, and not be filtered by the media, because right now this is probably the most tame chat I've ever had. I would love to tell people that and use the language that I typically use. I'm not rude, but people need to understand, and being politically correct in this field is good to a point. But what I'd like people to do is listen. When you talk to your whoever, representative, Congress, senator, I don't know, prime minister, whoever, at the end of that chat, you take my book, hand it to them, and say, listen, read this, And then if you don't understand one or two things, you're an idiot or you can't read. But yeah.
I think the thing with this crime type, so it's child sexual abuse material, right? I think a lot of people forget that this starts with abuse happening in a bedroom. There's an offender and there's a child, right? And then these images are sent to whoever online, you know, somewhere in the world, and it stays there. Like once it's on there, it stays there, you know. And this doesn't. It's not just images. It's not just photos. It's real abuse happening. It's being filmed. Real children being exploited. Like, yes, it happens in Australia. In fact, there's a lot of this happens in Australia, but we're not talking about it, and we have to talk about it. We have to talk about this. Kev, I know I gotta just answer some questions, but I just wanted to ask you, because I know there's a lot of stakeholders that listen to this podcast from all different law enforcement, working in the not-for-profit sectors and things like that. How has this affected you personally as an investigator, and what have you done to, I guess, look after yourself as you're working in this space? What advice can you give?
Okay, let's start out with how has this affected me? I've never been clinically diagnosed, but I know I have wicked bad PTSD. Matter of fact, just recently, within the last couple of weeks, I told my wife, I said we need to. She likes watching the news. I understand that. I said, well, I need to stop watching the news for a while. So I cut out the news for a couple weeks. I said, if you want to watch it, it's fine. I'll go upstairs or I'll go in the office and shut the door. You can listen to the news. I've sat on the couch and cried more times than I care to remember. Sometimes, 2 or 3 times a week. What do I do for self-care? There was a time when I was suicidal. I was going to kill myself, but I'm here. I'm still here. I talk to people like you. I talk to my wife. To say I'm okay is, maybe a stretch, but I'm doing pretty good. What would I tell? What are the hints that I would tell a parent? My favorite thing, Mom and Dad, did your son or daughter buy this $1,200 phone? I can guarantee, well, not guarantee, almost assured that your 8 or 10-year-old did not pay $1,200 for their iPhone. I'm tired of mom and dad saying, oh, but it's their phone. Mom and dad, it's not their phone. Okay. You bought them the phone. It is your phone. You are letting them use it. Who pays for the internet? Okay. Mom and dad pays for the internet. Okay. Once a week, sit down with your child, have them open up their phone and go through that. Look at all the apps. And if you don't understand what the app is, there's this really great thing on the internet. It's called the Google. You don't know what the app is, and your kid's trying to snowball you. Get online, whatever search engine you use. It doesn't have to be Google. Look up the app and find out what that is. Know your kids' passwords. I'm sick and tired of hearing parents say, well, I don't want to spy on my kid. You're not spying on your kid. For God's sakes, folks, you're trying to keep your kids safe, right? So get that out of your head. Oh, I don't want to make them mad. Who is the parent here? You are the parent. You're supposed to be an adult. Be an effing adult. Know your kids. If your kid has a password on the phone, you should know the password. Just for nothing else, what happens if your kid goes missing? and the phone's at home, and you don't know the password. You don't know how to get into the phone. So you're going to give the cops the iPhone, in which they may or may not be able to get into, and there could be some valuable information in there. Yeah, know the chat programs. Quit telling yourself you don't want to make your kids mad because you don't want to spy on them. That's I'm just going to be. That's just stupidity. That's asinine. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I don't want to spy on my kids because I don't want to make them mad. Well, you're the damn adult. You should be, look on their computer, their iPad, their phone. Do the same thing once a week. And if your kid's in the room for 8 hours a day with the door closed, you should occasionally go in there and find out what's happening.
Yeah.
Folks, if you have a teenage son and they're not looking at pornography online, I would be shocked. I mean, let's face it. If I was a kid these days, oh my God, my computer would be full of porn, because what boy doesn't like looking at naked women? It's just the way it is. But you should be aware of what are they looking at. I mean, if are they looking at rape videos, adult rape videos, something like that. That should be a concern, because from time to time you hear on the news that there was, and this just happened recently here. There was someone in grade school that was caught sexually assaulting another child, and the first thing that pops into my head is this: where did that learned behavior come from? Where did that child learn that? Is it from a movie? My guess it's probably from online. They've seen something online, and they're just mimicking that. Or it could be the parents. And the snap judgment is, oh my God, there's something wrong with that kid. And rarely does someone say, where did he learn that information from? Where did this 10-year-old or 11-year-old or 9-year-old learn about, sex? How do they know to reach for the crotch or the breast or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, you're giving me. I mean, these are things that are on my list of things we need to address in future podcasts, because we know our young people are unfortunately learning a lot of what they know through pornography, and it's teaching them very unhelpful and harmful sexual behaviors that that just don't float in adulthood, and that's leading to a lot of like domestic violence issues as these young adults become in relationships and things like that. And we do have a problem, because if we're not having open conversations with our kids, they have to go somewhere else to learn this stuff. So what do? They go and find this information on pornography websites. So it really starts, to me, and I agree with everything you said, Kev, like 100%. Being a police officer working with young people, 100%. Everything you've said, I've said to parents. I feel like running out of breath sometimes, because I've seen it myself, and I don't have anywhere near the experience that you've had in the back end, like listening to all these chats and actually seeing what you've seen. I can't even imagine. So I want to thank you for like your service and your commitment to this crime, and to the children and families, and just the work that you've done. I can't even imagine. But yeah, that's okay. I just know that that there's just so much to be done. So I just have one more question, because we're going to run out of time. But what if someone was to pick out, because a lot of these offenders are married, they have families, they have other children in the house. What can you look out for to know that someone in your house, or a partner or a family member, may be committing these offenses?
Well, one of the things that I'd point out, and I'll use an example of one of the guys that I arrested. He was up all night on the computer. So if you're, if your, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, whatever, is spending an exorbitant amount of time online, and it's not for stock trading or something like that, you should ask questions. There was another guy that had a room, and it was just completely full of CDs, DVDs, and there was a lock on the outside of the door, a key lock on the outside of the door, and
It's
the
not
wife
weird.
is right. There's nothing wrong with that,
Nothing wrong with that.
and he had the only key. I don't. I guess people get used to normal, like what is normal? Oh, well, that's just Kevin. He keeps the lock on the outside of his computer room, but that you should be asking that. You should be asking that stuff.
I
But
think too, like in your gut, you'd know something was wrong, and you really need to trust your instincts too on a lot of this stuff.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
I wish there was the easy button on this, but there's not. There is enough stuff out there that if you feel that something is wrong, there's nothing wrong with asking. They're probably going to lie to you, but yeah.
Mm.
Have I? How much time do I have?
Go for it. You're right.
Okay.
Little
There has been a number of people that I've arrested that their spouse had no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe they're doing it. Maybe they're doing it at work. But then there's been, I wouldn't say an equal amount. There's been a number of folks that knew that and I'll say their husband, because that's who it was molesting their kids, and they never said anything. The one lady that I can think of, she walked in and here's dad doing a photo shoot of their young daughter on their bed in lingerie, and she was just like, "Don't do that again." And then there was the same guy where he was forcing his daughter to perform oral sex on him in the living room, and mom walked in and they're like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Nothing," and it just went from there.
Yeah, I can't. I don't really have words for that either. But at the end of the day, like I know from the victim survivor's point of view, like the impacts of enabling family members, and if there's anything to be said, if you're a parent, you have a responsibility to your child. If you see something like that, to freaking report it. Like that is your duty, to look after your child, to protect your child. And in this country, in Australia, if you are enabling, you will be arrested. You will be charged.
Yep. Same here in the States. Listen, folks. Imagine this. Imagine if you've seen something and didn't think. Well, you thought something of it and you didn't say anything, and then 15 years from now, your son or your daughter comes to you and they say, "Mom, you know that you walked in on Dad and I, or whoever, Uncle Joe and I, 3 times. Why didn't you say something?
Yeah.
Why didn't you say something?"
Yeah.
Imagine.
Sometimes they don't know, but I get it. I know.
Yeah.
I know, and it's not okay. And there's a lot of, if you're one of those parents, there's a lot of support out there that you can like freaking message me, like But the AFP, the ACE, the guys, if you're not sure, you should still act on that.
Yes.
You should still say something.
I
Have a conversation with your child. That's a really good opportunity to say, "Hey, I'm not really sure what I saw the other day. Tell me more about that."
Yes. Yeah. And when you're talking when you're talking your child, you should use plain language.
Yes.
Not like, "Hey, did somebody touch your whatchamacallit?" Because if it comes down to it, and you're talking to law enforcement, and the child's like, oh yeah, somebody touched my whatchamacallit and my thingamajig, and whoever's doing the interview is like, well, can you explain that to me? Use plain language. A penis is a penis. Breast are breast. A vagina is a vagina. If you go to the doctor, you don't say, hey, I have a problem with my whatchamacallit and my doohickey was hurting. You say, hey, I think I have a venereal disease. My penis is hurting.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I mean, we can probably joke around about names for anatomy, but as law enforcement officers, we know that when those disclosures aren't made correctly, cases are lost, children continue to be abused, and it gets overlooked and maybe dismissed, and it might, be thought to be something that it's not. And, that's just what happens. So
yes, that does happen from time to time, because the child doesn't know how to explain it properly.
exactly.
If you ask, as you never ask a pointed question like, has someone touched your penis, and the kid looks at you with the head tilt, because they have no idea what the penis is.
Yeah, guys, protective education, talk to your kids, have these conversations, be brave. Kev, we're pretty much out of time here, but guys, there's so many important things. Please make sure you share this conversation. If you want to order a copy of Hunter of the Damned, A Walk Through Hell, you can do that through Amazon. Guys, thank you so much for being part of the audience tonight. Kev, thank you for being a part of this conversation. I think we're going to have to do a part 2. There's just so much that I didn't get to talk to you about, but yeah, what a profound and very, I don't know, we had to we only touched on the surface, and there's just so much more for us to chat about. But I thank you so much for getting up so early.
Well, thank you. This is definitely invigorated me. Now I have to wind down a bit before I actually go off the bed.
Right. But yeah, I just appreciate this conversation so much. So guys, please make sure you follow. You'll be able to download this podcast on any podcasting platform, or you can head to my website for more information about each episode. And guys, if you like what you're seeing, I need your support. So please jump onto my Patreon page at patreon.com/Kelly Humphries. Thank you. And we will see you again very soon. So thank you. Thanks, Kev.
Good night.